We, like everyone else, are still on tenterhooks as we await the final result of the US presidential election. I've got two eminent guests here with us, Jim Schultz, former legal counsel to the president, and David O'Sullivan, former EU ambassador to the United States. Jim, I'm going to turn to you first because you are a Pennsylvania man. Talk us through whether or not you see Donald Trump actually making it. When you look at what's happening at the moment, look how Biden is really ahead.
Well, look, I think it comes down to a couple of states. Arizona is still counting. That was called early for Biden, and now they're still counting. It's very, very close. And it's going to come down to Georgia, where they're still counting, and it's very, very close. And votes are coming in for Biden, trending for Biden from the Atlanta area. Whereas in Arizona, the votes that are coming in where Trump is behind are coming in for Trump and catching up to Biden. Then it really comes down to the crucial state of Pennsylvania, my home state, where I was general counsel to our governor. And in that state, we're about 100,000 votes apart, with votes mostly coming in from Philadelphia and some other counties around the region, but most of it from Philadelphia. So it's a slim path to victory for President Trump, but there's still a path.
Well, I think people, when they saw last night the claims from Rudy Giuliani and Eric Trump saying, you know, Joe Biden could have voted 50 times or 5,000 times, essentially insinuating that there's widespread corruption here. I think people question whether or not the transfer of power is going to be seamless. I mean, is there really any evidence of any voter fraud in Pennsylvania?
There have been instances, not so much voter fraud, but voting irregularities that cause people to question the system. Votes coming in at the last minute on a zip drive in certain states. You know, the idea that there were some ballot drop locations that were left in place that needed to be taken away at 8 o'clock at night. But I don't see that as tantamount to the fraud. I do see it as voting irregularities that, you know, should be addressed and should be questioned. You know, a lot of this is political bluster at this point in time, where the Trump team, and they're behind at this time, are trying to make efforts in the courts to make their case that there have been irregularities and therefore the process should be slowed and that the votes should be more strongly scrutinized.
But is Donald Trump then throwing up the legitimacy of the election, even if he wins or if Joe Biden wins?
No, the elections end up in court all the time in the United States, and that's why we have courts. So when there are disagreements among the two parties or among two candidates, they get resolved in an impartial way through the court system. And that's the way it's supposed to work. So the fact that folks are going before the courts in various states isn't anything new. They will be resolved fairly quickly, I believe. And we'll have and I think we'll have a very good sense of who the next president's going to be within the next 48 to 72 hours.
OK, so one of the things we want to talk to you about is the EU-US relation. You were working with Donald Trump as legal counsel. Why was he so hostile to the European Union?
I don't know that he was hostile to the European Union in that sense. I think what he wanted to do is make sure that he was holding Europe accountable in terms of the dollars that they were paying into NATO, you know, and some of the things that he was asking for folks to contribute to. His agenda was very much an agenda that focused on America first, the America first agenda. Same thing with China and the trade deals and you know, rolling back NAFTA and passing USMCA, which passed both houses. The Democratic House. So I think that was just part of his overall agenda, was holding, you know, where America has been giving it away for a number of years, and he wasn't going to stand for that.
OK. David O'Sullivan, so you were obviously the EU ambassador to the United States throughout this time. How did that America First policy impact on EU-US relations?
Well, I think Jim is a little underestimated the extent to which the president felt able to attack the EU. I mean, you know, we all remember the famous snails in Doonbeg, which he kind of attributed to his golf course getting blocked by the EU, and it turned out that nothing to do with the EU. And he did. I mean, he said the EU treated the US worse than China and things like that. I think he had an antipathy to any kind of international organization. But my basic view is I think he disliked the EU because when he dealt with individual European countries, the US was always the more powerful person in the room, right? Even when you get Germany in the room with the US, the US has more leverage. When you have the US and the EU debating, the two largest economies in the world, the EU is the world's largest trading bloc, then it was a much more equal discussion. And frankly, I think he didn't like that fact that he had to deal with something that was able to stand up to him. And that was the challenge we had. I think that we managed it not too badly. Jean-Claude Juncker went to Washington in July of 2018, and we found a kind of truce, an accommodation where certainly we agreed that things wouldn't get worse. And that has still held on until today. But it was not an easy time. And frankly, we frequently felt that some of the criticisms that were made were not entirely justified by the objective facts. But okay.
I mean, if you look at some of the issues, leaving the JCPOA, leaving the Paris Climate Accord, really big priorities for the European Union. I mean, can this get much worse over the next 4 years if we have another Trump presidency, David?
Well, look, we're still waiting to find out what the American people have decided and who will be their next president. So I think we need to be respectful of that process. I have little doubt that if President Trump is reelected for another 4 years, it will be more of the same. I mean, of course, it'll be adapted to the new situation, but he has the great virtue of consistency. In fairness, some people say he's volatile. I actually think he's remarkably consistent from the time he started as a candidate, through the primaries, through the convention, through the presidential campaign. He kept saying the same things, and when he came into office, he actually did that. So I think we could expect pretty much. As we used to say in Ireland, second verse, same as the first, if he gets reelected, and that will be a source of some tension and some controversy, of course, yes.
But I mean, how much damage has been done already to the multilateral system, to things like alliances between the EU and the US, but also things like NATO, the United Nations, any single part of the multilateral system? And of course, the EU itself prioritizes multilateralism. David?
Yeah, look, again, I don't want to be unfair to President Trump. He was elected on a platform of saying that none of this was in America's interest, right? So he then went out to dismantle it because he thinks it doesn't work for America. Now, I disagree with that. Many people in America disagree with that. But that has been his position. And clearly, I do think that one of the consequences is, unfortunately for America, is a loss of America's leadership role, its convening role, because he has been so critical of these international organizations and so harsh in his critics, even more harsh in his critics of his allies than of his adversaries, that I think America has kind of lost a little bit of its standing. But then we wait and see. Let's see what finally emerges from this election, and are we dealing with Trump 2.0 or Biden 1.0? And then we will see. Biden clearly on these issues will bring a completely different approach if he wins the election. And from a European perspective, I think we would welcome that more than the approach of President Trump. But again, the American people are going to choose who they want to represent them for the next 4 years.
Jim, what about that? America First is actually America alone, and in actual fact, America's influence in the world has actually retreated. And even from an EU point of view, America is no longer seen as a reliable partner.
Well, I think the view of the folks who are anti-globalist, folks who elected President Trump the first time, that they think this is a success because it's bringing jobs back to the United States. It's better for the United States, in the eyes of some of those folks. And look, I think Joe Biden, if he's elected president, a lot of the people who were supporters of the anti-globalist policies of the prior administration were Democrats, members of Joe Biden's party. We were seeing in Western Pennsylvania, for instance, when you talk about the Paris Accord, that is oil and gas country in Pennsylvania. The folks out there are Democrats. They typically vote Democratic across the board until recently. They started voting more and more Republican. And in particular, since President Trump came on the scene, you see a lot of votes out of Western Pennsylvania in that oil and gas area where they're voting for Donald Trump. Joe Biden's going to want to get those folks back into the party. He's going to want to get those folks back into the fold. So he's going to have to do quite a dance between just undoing all of the America First policies and taking a real good look at the electorate and what they think about it. They thought it was going to be a blowout in Pennsylvania. It wasn't. They thought it was going to be a blowout in Michigan. It wasn't. Same thing in Wisconsin. And when you have to look at the electorate and you look 4 years down the road, you have to do some thinking about, well, why didn't we do better in traditionally democratic states? I think it has a lot to do with the America First agenda.
OK, Jim Schultz, former legal counsel to Donald Trump, and David O'Sullivan, former EU ambassador to the United States. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. Back to you in studio.